All right, class. First off, as always, good day. I'm glad you're here. Today, we are going to be talking about uh, the real crux of World War II when Germany really starts to take over. Okay. Um, and you'll be seeing how quickly they took over some areas and things like that. So it's actually like kind of like, dang, if when you really look at it, if you're really paying attention, I hate to say it, but it actually is impressive how quickly um, the Nazis were able to take over Europe. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started with the warm-up picture. The first question asks you, to analyze the picture and tell me, what do you see? What's going on here? Okay. Oh, excuse me. Now, the second question asks you, based off your analysis of the picture, what do you think this artist is trying to say about those three countries in the back? All right. Now, the one in the stars on the hat, um, that should be pretty easy. The middle guy, who's kind of like has his hands between his legs and he's kind of like looking, sweating a little bit, um, that's Britain. And the one with the hat jumping out of his head, that's France. Okay, so what do you think this artist is trying to say about those three countries? So look at what's happening with Hitler. Look what he's doing. Does it look like he's having trouble? Does it look like the ball is wobbling or anything like that? And how is he controlling that ball? This is the world. How is he controlling it? Okay, so pause the video, write your responses, okay? Because we're moving on in three, two, one. All right. So if you watched the last video or if you were in class last time, you we heard a lot about different laws that were created to really hurt Jewish people, you know. So now there's more laws and legislation that's being passed that is meant to hurt Jewish people. And one of the big ones that not only hurt Jewish people, but really just everyone was that Jewish doctors could not treat non Jewish people. Now, the problem is this: a lot of the best doctors at that time in that part of the world were Jewish. Some of the best heart surgeons, uh, the stomach, gastro surgeons, and things like that. The best ear, nose, throat, and doctors were Jewish. So not only did this hurt those doctors who were trying to be good doctors who care about their patients regardless of their backgrounds and things like that. No, excuse me. Now they won't be able to see them and they won't be able to get him as much money because now they can only see Jewish people. But also think of the people who need those doctors and now they can't see them. Okay. Now, this kid you see right there, that is Herschel. I'm going to kill this last name. Grenspan. I think that's how you say it. He's a 17-year-old Polish Jewish kid. Basically, what happened was his family sent him off to France, okay, because of what was happening with the Nazis. Now, while he is in France, he hears word that his parents have been captured. They're gathered up in the concentration camps and the ghettos. So, what? Excuse me, I'm so sorry. It's already late at night. So basically, what happened is um, Herschel decides, you know what, I need to make a statement. I need the whole world to hear what these Nazis are doing to Jewish people. So he basically sets up a meeting to talk to some German official type of person. And the one who unfortunately meets him is this guy named Ernst von Rath. And right before he can even say anything, uh, Herschel shoots him. Okay. And he's a diplomat. The Ernst Röhm is a diplomat in Paris. He represents Germany, and so he's there dying, And Herschel just sits there and waits for the police to come. Um, he gets arrested and he basically makes a statement saying, the whole world's not paying attention to what the Hitler and the Nazis are doing to Jewish people, in Poland and Czechoslovakia and things like that. Now, Herschel used this to try to bring awareness, while Hitler spun this situation in his favor, basically telling people, look, these Jewish people are trying to kill us. We never did anything physical to this like this to them. You know, they're the ones who are trying to kill us. Look at that. See, they've already started, and if we don't get rid of them, they're going to get rid of us. And this caused an uproar in uh, Germany. So from November 9th through November 10th, it's called Christennacht, which is means night of broken glass. Basically, Jewish churches, which are called synagogues, homes, schools, businesses that were owned by Jewish people or where Jewish people went to, were burned down. 30,000 Jewish men were rounded up and arrested just because they were Jewish men. Um, some men were killed. Same thing with women and children. Some were killed. But this is the beginning part of when the Nazis truly start being physical in hurting Jewish people. Now, again, if you look from this point in the past, even in the last lesson, everything has been laws. Yeah, the laws may suck and they're aimed toward Jewish people to make their lives hell, but it was nothing physical. And didn't say you could beat a Jewish person up any day of the week. It didn't say any laws like that. But because of this instance, now Hitler, because he spun it, Jewish people are being, in a sense, hunted now. So here's your first question. Do you think that the Night of Broken Glass was going to happen no matter what? That the Nazis were going to attack, beat up, and kill Jewish people no matter what? Or do you think that, hey, if this thing never happened, the Nazis would have still continued their non-violent but discrimination against Jewish people? So what do you think? Do you think that if that kid Herschel never did killed that guy Rom, do you think that the Nazis would eventually end up hurting and killing Jewish people, or do you think they would continue just making laws, making their lives hell? Okay, and tell me, why do you feel that way? Okay, so pause the video, write your response, because we're moving on in three, two, one. Now, September 4th, 1939, Japan declares neutrality in the European War. Okay, Japan, Germany, and Italy, they're allies. But basically, Japan tells Italy and Germany, we can't help you guys because we're invading China, and China's huge. It's a huge country compared to Japan. So they're telling them, hey, we're trying to take care of this situation. We support you and everything, but we can't send soldiers over to fight. Sorry. Yeah. Oh, excuse me. September 5th, the very next day, September 5th, America basically says we like to be by ourselves. What happens in China and Japan happens there. What happens in Europe, that's you guys. We would prefer to be by ourselves over here. So Americans favor isolationism, and because of that, we declare neutrality in the European war. Now, here's the funny thing. 5 days later, Canada declares war against Germany. I had some students tell me, like, well, really, Canada? Why Canada? Well, because Canada and France are basically cousins. All right. So they see it as kind of like you're attacking our country in a sense too. Even though that's not our country, um, they're they're still kind of like us, type of thing. Several weeks later, a couple weeks actually, Germany bombs Warsaw, Poland. I mean, they bombed the crap out of that town. There's like very little buildings still standing. It's all demolished, and the city basically says, "Well, there's nothing worth saving anymore, nothing worth fighting for," so they surrender. 2 days later, um, throughout September and November 1939, Jewish people are gathered from Austria, Czechoslovakia, Poland, Germany. They're gathered up, they're putting ghettos, and they're being sent to concentration camps. Now, November 14th of that same year, the Soviet Union is kicked out of the League of Nations because of their aggressive attack on Finland. Now, remember, when Germany attacked Poland, Russia said they'll join too. And they didn't run into each other mainly because of their non aggression agreement. Now, Russia's like, well, since the Nazis are taking control of everywhere, we might as well do the same thing. And again, Finland was like, no, 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 you're not doing that stuff here. Okay. Um, and so then the Olympic Committee basically had an agreement saying, you know what? Uh, what's the point of having an Olympics if the whole world is basically going to war again? So the 1940 Olympics are officially canceled. It's supposed to be hosted by Finland, but they cancel it. Now, April 9th, 1940, Germany attacks two countries at one time, Norway and Denmark. Then, on May 10th, basically like a month later, Germany attacks Belgium and Netherlands at the same time using those blitzkrieg attack. They take over them. Four countries in about a month. That's not bad, you know. Now the French, after World War One, they set up these barriers to prevent any like tanks from coming over and things like that. Um, if the tanks were still like they were in World War One, those barriers probably would have helped. But because the Germans had those Panzers, which are some of the best tanks at that time, I think they were the best. It was like nothing to them. It'd be basically like a stack of leaves standing in your way and you're running. That stack of leaves has no. It's not gonna do anything. It's not gonna stop you. Same thing with those barriers. We're not gonna stop the Nazis from coming in. But France had some help. Britain sent their soldiers over to France to try to help them out because again, France is the last country in Europe really that has withstood um, the Nazis. So they're sending their troops over to try to help them. But again, the Nazis are so much more well trained. They're seasoned fighters. They have the best tanks, planes, and things like that. So they're just pushing their way through France. So here's your next question. Do you think it's wise to attack two countries at the same time in a war? Do you think that's wise? What do you think? So think about it, pause the video, write your response, okay? Because we're moving on in three, two, one. So, I said earlier how the Nazis were pushing the British and the French soldiers, back. Well, they did that. And they basically pushed them to the sea. And with almost 450,000 British and French soldiers, they were backed up into a town called Dunkirk. Okay. Now, if you look at this map, you'll see where it says Dunkirk. That's Dunkirk. And they were surrounded. This picture is true. They were surrounded by the Nazis on land with the tanks and soldiers. And on top of that, they were covered in the air with German planes, and in the water they had German submarines. So 450,000 soldiers are on the beach of Dunkirk waiting for their ride to come in. So battleships and carriers were coming into Dunkirk, and what's sad is the Germans would let the ships come in. Yeah, sure, come on, port, pick up some soldiers, the wounded, these other soldiers who need help. Sure, gather them. And as soon as the uh, the battleships and the carriers were out to sea a little bit, they would sink them, shoot a torpedo at them, and then those soldiers would drown. Especially those who are in stretchers and things like that. They can't swim, so they died. Now, British Prime Minister Winston Churchill, he is just like, God, what can we do? What can we do? What can we do? And then it just like he gives a call to civilians. Anyone who has a boat, fishing boat, a yacht, whatever. We need you guys to go to Dunkirk and get those soldiers. Here's why this plan, which was known as Operation Dynamo, was so interesting. Okay, because battleships, they sink in the water, right? And let's say they sink down 60 feet. Submarines can shoot their uh, their torpedoes like at 45 feet and below, so, or I should say, and more. So they can shoot at 50 feet, you know, 48 feet, 45 feet. They can't shoot it above, like they can't shoot it at 40 feet or 30 feet. They can't. Okay, so let's say it's 45. What made this plan so interesting is that the boats, the yachts, all that, they only went down about 30 feet at most. So the submarines shooting their torpedoes are going to go right under the ship. They could launch all the torpedoes they want because those torpedoes back then only shot straight. They never curved like they have now, where they have like heat seeking and things like that, laser target, all that crap. No, no, no. They just went straight. And so since the civilian bottom ships were right here, the torpedoes would just go right through. So the passenger ships land in Dunkirk. They gather as much soldiers as they can, and they go back to France. Or sorry, go back to England. And in just in case you're wondering, well, what about the German planes? Yeah, the German planes tried to attack the civilian boats, but this is where the British Air Force came in and had dogfights with them, so that the boats can make it to Britain. In total, they saved 338,000 soldiers. Problem was, they had to leave about 90,000 behind. Yeah. And then basically, right when that was done, Dunkirk was taken over and Germany controlled all of France. So here's my next question for you. Do you think Operation Dynamo or the Dunkirk escape, would you consider that a success or no? There were about 450,000 soldiers, 338,000 were saved, and 90,000 were left behind. Would you consider that a success? Why or why not? So the writing prompts on the bottom there for you, I believe that Operation Dynamo was a success or wasn't a success because, and explain. Okay. So pause the video, write your response because we're moving on in 3, 2, 1. Now this next part, this is a speech, very famous speech by Winston Churchill. You don't have to write anything, but I would like for you to listen, especially this last paragraph, which I'm going to read for you. Okay. If you want to read along, you may do so. It says, even though large tracts of Europe and many old and famous states have fallen or may fall into the grip of the Gestapo and all the odious apparatus of Nazi rule. We shall not flag or fail. We shall go on to the end. We shall fight in France. We shall fight on the seas and ocean. We shall fight with growing confidence and growing strength in the air. We shall defend our island, whatever the cost may be. We shall fight on the beaches. We shall fight on the landing grounds. We shall fight in the fields and in the streets. We shall fight in the hills. We shall never surrender. And even if, which I do not for a moment believe, this island or a large part of it were subjugated and starving, then our empire beyond the sea, armed and guarded by the British fleet, would carry on the struggle until, in God's good time, the New World, with all its power and might, steps forth to the rescue and the liberation of the Old. Now, that speech was given on June 4th, 1940, the same day that those civilian boats were going into Dunkirk to save them. Okay, Prime Minister Winston Churchill gave that speech, and it gave people so much hope and pride. They're like, yeah, yeah. It was like a great pep up speech, and it made the British people feel like, yeah, we can take whatever the Germans throw at us. We'll take it. We'll show them what that we can take a hit. About a week later, Italy declares war on Britain and France. It's known as the Pact of Steel with Germany. Okay. But 4 days later, Germany's army goes into Paris and they set up a puppet government. Now, this is something you're going to have to remember for next week. All right, so keep this in the back of your head. Basically, what happened is Germany, the Nazis, set up this government. The Nazis control it, but they want to make it things legal and make it seem like, oh, there is still a government here in France, But in reality, they didn't listen to the French people. That government listened to the Nazis, you know. So okay, so like I said, just keep that in the back of your head. Now with the Germans controlling basically all of Europe, now they focus their attention on Britain. Okay. Hitler wanted to invade Britain. That was known as Operation Sea Lion. Okay. That was the plan. That was the goal, to attack and invade Britain. But Hitler knew, man, that speech of fighting on the beaches and all that stuff, he knew that pumped up the British people. Now, what he decided to do was to break their spirit and their will. Because once you take that that drive from people, that's it. They don't want to fight. So what they did was the Germans bombed Britain throughout the summer of 1940. They would do night raids. They would send planes in the middle of the day, dropping bombs, things like that. And then at nighttime, when people were ready about to go to sleep, bring out some more bombs and start dropping them. The Moors, the Spaniards, they did this quite a bit when they fought people. They would fight have half their soldiers fight in the day, and then the other half like fire cannonballs during night, destroy the walls and things like that. Because if you get your enemy to lose sleep, they're not going to function well. Their hearts and their minds are not going to be as sharp, and they're not going to want to fight as tough as they could be if they had a good night's sleep. So it's a tactic thing. So a lot of businesses, a lot of homes and churches were destroyed in Britain because of these bomb raids. If you look at this picture, let me see if I can move this up a little bit. There we go. That's a picture of a famous cathedral in London. And if you look at the buildings on the bottom, see how you can see the smoke across through the windows? That's because the other half of the buildings are gone. So those are people's homes where just one wall's still standing and the rest of it's demolished. It's gone. You know, many civilians died, and property again, like as you can see, like here, it's damaged. Um, a lot of these people had to sleep in subways and in bomb shelters. Now, here is your exit ticket question. Take an educated guess, and based off what you've learned so far, do you think the Nazis are going to be successful in invading England? What do you think? Do you think they are, or do you think they're not? So pause the video, write your response, okay? But once you finish, that's it for this lesson, okay? So hopefully you learned something new. Hopefully you enjoyed it. You guys, you take care, you be safe, and I'll see you guys later, okay?